Alright you guys, welcome back to the channel. It's been a while since we've had an upload. This is going to be the start of a new series here on the channel where I am going to be going through every continent one by one, and I'm just going to give 15 of the best tips that I have for different locations across that continent for Geoguessr and how you can narrow down where you are on Google Street View. So I'm doing this firstly because a recent video that I did on playing in a Geoguessr tournament did a ton better than I was expecting. I got a lot of friendly comments and likes on that video, new subscribers as well, and so I really appreciate all of the interaction and the support. It was very unprecedented. I was not expecting that video to do well at all, so it honestly means a lot, so thank you very much. And one of the comments that I seemed to get the most was like how I'm able to narrow down where I am in the world so quickly, and so I figured I'd sort of do this mini series where I just give 15 of my different various favorite tips for each continent, and I would make a little mini series out of it. So here we go. As for Pokemon and things like that, again, I do still have some stuff on the back burner planned, just trying to find some time to upload it and record it rather and upload it. I have recently just come home from university, and so my setup is very different and my time is not quite as, like, I don't know, I can't really dictate my own time so much anymore now that I'm home and there's a lot more to do at home. So yeah, I'm just gonna have to figure that stuff out before we get back into the swing of things. So in the meantime, there's this video, and I hope you guys do enjoy it. And so with all of that addressed, let's go ahead and hop into tip number one for North America. So tip number one, off the bat here, is going to be this sign on the right. And the main thing that I'm going to be pointing out, we're going to start out fairly easy here, is this tiny little sign at the bottom, which says 150 meters. And so with the yellow center line, you are going to most likely be in the Americas, and so it's in this round, it's probably going to be a 50-50, usually between Canada and the United States. We have these very nice evergreen pine trees, and with this landscape, I don't think it can really be anywhere else in North America. However, since we see meters, we are going to be able to deduce that we are in Canada, as obviously Canada uses the metric system, which is honestly a lot better than the United States customary system. So we're going to be seeing things like meters, kilometers in Canada, while we see miles, yards, and feet in the United States. One thing to note as well is when you see signs like speed limit signs in Canada, they will actually have maximum on them, like written on the sign. And in the United States, it doesn't say maximum, it says speed limit. So that's another really good way to dictate where you are between Canada and the United States. And so before I move on, I also do want to mention this sort of border on this upper part of the sign as well. This is pretty much only found in Canada. I don't think I can ever think of a round where I've had a United States round and there's been a border on a sign like this. Canada seems to have a lot of these funky borders, and so if you ever see something like this, or if you see like a checkerboard or some strange other layout of a border on a sign, chances are that you are going to be in Canada. And for the sake of the video, I think that we're probably over here-ish, maybe heading down the mountains, like somewhere down here. I'm not too sure on that. Let's just go ahead and see. Not quite. We were actually in BC, not Alberta, but again, I was able to narrow down that we were in Canada and get a decent score. So we will move on to tip number two. Okay, here we are with tip number two, and as you can see, there's really just not a lot to go off of here. Again, with the double yellow line, we can tell we're probably in the United States or Canada, but we're just in some random forest, and that's normally pretty difficult. However, we do have a really big hint here, which is the main tip featured now, and that's going to be the distance between these two yellow center lines. And since they're super duper far apart, this actually narrows down to the state to only two states, and those two states are Washington and Oregon up here in the Pacific Northwest. With the distance that we have in between these two yellow lines in the center, we have to be in one of these two states. And normally round like this is going to be pretty terrible, but because of that, we can instantly just plonk it. I'm going to assume that we're probably like somewhere around here. No, we're actually in Oregon, outside of Portland, but we're just able to plonk it and get a really nice region guess on Washington and Oregon, rather than having to guess the entirety of Canada and the US in this. So really helpful tip if you notice that your lines are pretty far apart. If we get around in future where the lines are closer together, which is by far the more common variant, then I'll be sure to point that out as well. But for now, let's go ahead and move on to tip number 3. Okay, so tip number 3 is another pretty easy one. Over here we have the United States interstate signs. Obviously, the US uses states, Canada uses provinces, and so on these signs where it says interstate, we're obviously going to be in the states. And yeah, this is just what the United States signs look like for highways. These are the interstates and the big highways, and then we do also have smaller state-specific highways that have their own symbol. And as you'll notice, we are here on I-80, which is a pretty famous highway. If you don't know where it is, though, the way you can remember highways in the United States is if it is an even number, that means that it is going to be running east-west, whereas odd numbers run north-south. And if it is a very small odd number, like this is I-5 in my home state of Washington, that means that it's going to be on the west. Whereas if we have a very, let's see if we can find a north-south highway, yeah, 95 over here, a very big number is going to be on the east. And then it's the same thing with the even numbers. So at the top here we have I-94, and then at the bottom it's going to be I believe you can find like, yeah, I-8. Yeah, that's a very southern one here in Arizona. So the smaller the number, the more west or south you are going to be. The bigger the number, the more north or east you're going to be. And then evens run horizontally from east to west or west to east, and vice versa for the odd numbers. So that's going to be the interstate system in the United States explained. And then we do also have this state-specific highway with the symbol that is just the shape of the state of Nevada. So we can definitely just deduce that we're in Nevada here. A lot of states just use the shape of the state as their symbol for these state highways, but a lot of them also use other random states. So like Utah, I'm pretty sure uses like a beehive shape. I don't know why they do, but yeah, I'm pretty sure that most of them just end up using the shape of the state itself. So we're just going to go ahead and stick this in the middle of Nevada because I don't have a better region guess and it's way up there. But yeah, we were able to narrow down the state, and there you go. And yeah, I probably should have guessed on the highway now that I think about it, because this is I-80 and we did have signs. So yeah, that would make sense. But again, we were able to narrow down the state and the country just based on those signs. So we'll move on to tip number 4. All right, and tip number 4 is going to be these taxi cabs, which are exclusive to Mexico City in Mexico. So they're gonna have this white sort of bottom color and then pink on the top. As you can see, they're super common here. We have just 3 in this one frame. We're probably gonna have some behind us. No, but anyways, these sort of pink and white taxis are going to be exclusive to Mexico City here in Mexico. So we can, yeah, we can definitely just plonk somewhere here in the middle of downtown. And another thing I'd like to point out while we're here is the 55 here on the phone number. This is what phone codes in Mexico look like. It's going to be an area code of 2 digits followed by 4 and then 4. The only things you really need to know though for Geoguessr are some of the 2-digit area codes. I only know 3 of them myself, or I think I know 3. 55 and 56 are going to be in Mexico City. The other ones that I know, I'm pretty sure that 33 is going to be Guadalajara. So that's another one of the biggest cities in Mexico. And I think Monterrey is like, is it 81 or 91? But I'm not sure. I might have to brush up on that. But point is, if you just memorize a couple of these phone codes, chances are that whenever you're in the city and you see the phone code and it matches up, that you're going to be able to instantly know which city you're in, and that can save you a lot of points as we slam our guess in here. And yep, it is just going to be in Mexico City. So those taxi cabs definitely gave it away, and the 55 area code also certainly gave it away. So we'll move on to tip number 5. Alright, here we are with tip number 5. This one's another rather straightforward one, and it essentially just has to do with this stop sign here, which does not say stop. Before I try and pronounce this, this is French for stop. I believe it's arrêt, something like that. But if you see this, then you know 100% you're going to be in the French-speaking part of Canada, which is essentially just Quebec and some of the other smaller provinces out here, like Newfoundland and New Brunswick, places like that. Some of them will be speaking in French as well. But usually, if you see arrêt on a stop sign, you are going to be in Quebec. So I'm just gonna slam this like somewhere in uptown Montreal. It could also be Quebec City or some other random city. But yeah. That's a pretty clear indication that you're going to be in there. You're never going to be in the US, and you're also never going to be in France. So France actually has stop on their stop signs. Only Quebec and the other French-speaking parts of Canada will have arrêt on their stop sign, which I think is pretty funny. But there you go. I guess they are proud of their nationality, and rightfully so. And that was actually in a suburb, or a rather small town outside of Quebec City. But yeah, we were able to narrow down the state, or rather the province, excuse me, in Canada. So not too bad at all. And we will move on to round number 6. Alright, and here we are for tip number 6. This is going to be dealing with these poles over here and some of the other various poles in this shot. So as you can see here, we have red and then green and then the rest of the pole. And then over here we have red and white and then the rest of the pole. And these sort of very colorful poles are very often found in Guatemala. I don't know why Guatemala likes to color their poles, but they just do. And we also have a Guatemalan flag up there, so learn your flags. That'll also definitely help you out at Geoguessr. But yeah, the point is that for some reason Guatemala really loves to color their poles. Usually you will find them in red, green, and white. You can also find them in yellow, or you can also find them in combinations of any of those colors like we have here. So yeah, this is a pretty safe Guatemala guess. Something else to note, if you're in Guatemala, is going to be this car. This car itself covered probably 99% of the coverage in Guatemala, to my knowledge. I'm pretty sure every round in Guatemala that I've seen probably has a car with the mirror sticking out of the blur, and then also this roof rack sort of sticking out as well. Note that if you see a car like this, there are also other countries that have similar cars, but if you are thinking that you might be in Guatemala and you look down and you see that car, that's just another great indication. So we have the painted poles, we have the car, we have the flag. Let's go ahead and zoom in on Guatemala here. I'm just gonna click outside of Guatemala City and we will call it good. Yeah, not quite the correct region, but you know what? Guatemala is a small country, so we're going to pick up a lot of points just for knowing that it was Guatemala. So with that, we will move on to tip number 7. Alright, for tip number 7, we have some very, very, very bright white soil on either side of this road, and I think this is going to be our first and only soil-based tip in this video. As you can see, we have just this super blindingly white soil on either side, and that's pretty indicative that you are in the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. So yeah, if you don't know where that is, it's going to be this sort of southern knob at the end of Mexico, and you are almost 9 out of 10 times with soil like this going to be in this state of Quintana Roo. Looks like this portion of the road might actually line up. It wouldn't surprise me if it was just there. It probably isn't. Yeah, it was actually somewhere else completely, but we were in, again, the correct state just based off of the color of the soil there. If you see super duper blindingly white soil on either side of the road like that, then chances are you are going to be in Quintana Roo on the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. And with that, we will move on to tip number 8. Okay, so for tip number 8, we are over halfway done now. We have another pretty free and well-known tip, but yeah, if you can remember about this tip, then you will definitely be able to save yourself some points guessing in the United States. So the tip is that when you see a road like this, it's super duper grainy. It looks like, you know, salt and peppery sort of texture. between the black and the regular road color as well. Just there's tons and tons of wear on it as well. This is a very, very distinct thing to the state of Texas. You can get roads like this sometimes in Oklahoma, sometimes in eastern New Mexico as well, but if you ever see a salt and pepper grainy road like this, then chances are you can just click the center of Texas and send your guess, and you're going to be getting a lot of points. So yeah, again, not exactly a super complex tip, but definitely one that can save you a lot of points. And with that, we will move on to tip number 9. All right, here we are for tip number 9. This is another city-specific one. We had the Mexico City area code and cabs earlier, and in this one, we have these light posts with these sort of bulbous light lamp things at the end of it, and then also this very distinct curve to the support. These sort of light posts are going to be exclusive to the city of Toronto in Ontario, Canada. So let's go ahead and just zoom into Toronto right down here. This looks like it's probably just somewhere in downtown, so I'm gonna click like right here and we'll call that good. And yeah, it was just in the middle of downtown Toronto. So if you ever see lampposts and lights like the ones that we just saw, then you can safely click Toronto and earn yourself a bunch of points. And so with that being said, we will move on to tip number 10. All right, here we are for tip number 10, which pertains to the yellow plates here in the United States. Chances are you won't be seeing too many yellow plates in the United States, but when you do, it is very, very safe that you send the New York, New Jersey area. So I'm going to send probably just somewhere out. I don't think this is Manhattan. I'll just click somewhere random in Brooklyn. I don't know how to region guess New York City or the surrounding area too well, but just with these plates, we have to be just somewhere in this area. So yeah, we will go ahead and send that. We do also, going back to what I said on tip number 2, this is what a normal double yellow line looks like in the United States. If you go back to that Oregon round that we had earlier, you'll see that they are so much further apart. It's like not even funny. It's so distinct. So yeah, if you see them far apart, go ahead and go into the Washington, Oregon area. And yeah, with yellow plates, just go ahead and send New York or New Jersey. I will say also you can get yellow plates in Alaska, but Alaska and New York, just climate-wise, look so different that you should be able to differentiate. And Alaska is also a lot less common on Geoguessr. So we will just go ahead and send the New York area. And it looks like it was actually in Queens, not in Brooklyn, but close enough. I'm very happy with that guess. We will move on to tip number 11. All right, here we are for tip number 11, which pertains to this pole over here. So if we look very closely at the pole, you'll see that it's not actually circular. It gets pretty obvious up here. You can see that it's actually octagonal, and you will find octagonal poles exclusively in Mexico. So if you ever see a pole which has 8 sides, or it looks like it has a lot of angles and it's not a circle, chances are you are in Mexico. So that's a pretty useful one to know. Something else that I'd like to point out in this frame is this satellite dish here. Looks like we have another one down there as well. These blue satellite dishes are also very, very common in Mexico. And yeah, they're just everywhere. Like here's a third. Oh my goodness, there's just so many random blue. Is this blue? It might be blue on the other side, no cap, but there's just so many random blue satellite dishes throughout all of Mexico. I genuinely didn't know this was here when I found this location, but yeah, that's really funny. Point is, if you see blue satellite dishes, you can probably send Mexico. This looks like, to me, somewhere southern, like somewhere down here. I'll just click this town and call it good. No, not quite the correct region, but you know what? It's fine, and we knew it was Mexico because of that pole, and also because of the absolutely obnoxious amount of blue satellite dishes that they have. So that's a pretty easy way to tell that you are in Mexico. And with that, we will move on to tip number 12. All right, here we are for tip number 12, and you can see that we're actually driving on the left-hand side of the road. And if you see that you're driving on the left and you can tell that you're in North America for whatever reason, then the only place that you can be is actually Bermuda, which is this remote little island, if you don't know, off the coast of the United States, just kind of in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. It looks like we have water to our south, so I'm going to click this sort of southern coast here when I make my guess. This actually doesn't look quite right, but yeah, the point is, if you see that you're driving on the left-hand side of the road, then you are going to be in Bermuda. The reasoning for that is because Bermuda is it's considered a British sort of territory, and as a result, they have a lot of British customs over there, such as driving on the left-hand side of the road. So if you ever see anything oddly British in the Northern American continent, then chances are you're going to be in Bermuda. And we were actually at this coast. Well, oh well, we still get good points just for knowing that it was in Bermuda. So with that, we will move on to tip number 13. All right, you guys, here we are for tip number 13. So if I just turn around, you can see that we have these super duper flat, like flat roofed, boxy, wide houses. These are very, very common throughout the Midwestern region of the United States. So we're going to be most likely in Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Iowa kind of area here. And yeah, that's a pretty nice tip on its own. But the main tip of this segment is actually going to be this fire hydrant here. Due to its unique turquoisey, like light bluey color, we are able to deduce that we are in the city of Indianapolis somewhere. I'm just gonna click some random like suburban area somewhere out here and call that good. But yeah, these blue sort of fire hydrants are exclusively found in Indianapolis. So, and yeah, we were actually in the southern part of the city, but that's okay. We still managed to get the correct city and get a boatload of points just for knowing that little meta. And with that, we are going to go on to tip number 14. All right, here we are for tip number 14, and tip number 14 has to do with this very, frankly, like creepy sign with a hyper-realistic eye. But this sign is exclusive to the nation of Panama. Let's go ahead and just zoom in on Panama. I'll probably pick somewhere not too far from the capital, Panama City, and we'll just call that good. Yeah, so if you ever see this weird looking sign with an eye on it, then chances are you're going to be in Panama. And actually, I'm going to move over here because I spotted something else. Yes, this is a Panama taxi. If you have this sort of yellow cab with a checkerboard that wraps around most of it, and then this sort of stripy pattern that wraps around the rest of the car, then you are going to be in Panama. As for why this taxi is pulled up to somebody's house and parked, you'll have to ask somebody else. I don't know everything, but yeah, I don't know why that's there, but it is there, so we're gonna enjoy that it is there and use it as an example for this round. But yeah, point is, if you see a sign like this or a taxi cab like the one we just showed you, or if you have this sort of silver car with a stubby antenna like this, then you're going to be in Panama. And yes, there we are. We will move on to the final tip of the video, tip number 15. Alright, here we are for tip number 15. We haven't talked yet about bollards, and so I figured I would include at least one. Bollards are these little sort of posts, and they don't necessarily have to be posts, but they are these little sort of markings that you see on the side of highways and roads throughout the entire world. Almost every country has several unique bollards that they use, and this one is exclusive to the state up here, the Northwestern Territories in Canada. So I said it again, it's not a state, it is a province, the Northwestern Territories province of Canada. And so there's only a few roads that are actually covered. Most of them are near this lake here, which is called the Great Slave Lake. Kind of strange, but yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and pick that road. Another thing to note here is the very, very small trees. Like, these trees are not super duper tall like you would see in much of Canada. They are rather small and rather skinny, rather frail looking trees. The more frail the trees look, the more north you're going to be. So you can see these trees, they are found in this region of Canada. They'll also be found in northern Russia, as well as these states up here in Norway, Sweden, and Finland. So yeah, you can get them in this sort of region. And so just looking at that, and then looking at these bollards with the sort of black paint and then the white at the bottom, then yeah, you know that you're going to be in Canada with, or rather, you know that you're going to be in Northwestern Territories with bollards like this. So yeah, first you can probably just deduce that you're in Canada based on the landscape and the double yellow line, and then the bollard will help you from there. And this should be a decent guess. Yeah, not bad. Not bad for the Northwestern Territories. It's a pretty rare round to get simply because there's not too many roads up here, but yeah, whenever you do get it and you see that bollard, you will now know. And that's going to be the end of this video. I hope that you find some of these tips useful. If you're not a Geoguessr player, then I guess I've just stuffed your head with a bunch of random knowledge, but I don't know, random knowledge is also cool. So yeah, if you enjoyed the video, then I'm glad that you found it fun. If you found it helpful, then I'm glad that you found it helpful. And yeah, I hope to see you guys in the next video. Until then, goodbye.